Thanks everyone for joining the Infrastructure Network. My name is Chad Smeltzer. I am your host. Today, our guest is Aryeh Canter, who is the Director of Sales Operations with the software company Ayyeka. Thanks for joining me, Aryeh.
Happy to be here.
Aryeh, you've been in the industry a little while. It looks like you have an engineering background and you've been involved in wastewater. Is that correct?
Exactly. Yeah, actually, my journey to Ayyeka started at my undergraduate degree. I studied sustainability, so I learned about how to approach this issue from a science point of view, environmental, economic. And what I sort of realized is that you need practical tools to solve these issues. We can talk and we can think, but until we have, boots on the ground fixing the problems we have, everything's only going to get worse. So I went back to school, studied wastewater. And then after a few years doing consulting, I was able to find Ayyeka and been here over 2 years now.
Nice. So you were trying to find a solution. And do you think that one of the biggest problems we have in infrastructure is a lack of information, data?
I think as any engineer knows, if you have good data, then you can make smart decisions. And if you don't have good data, then your decisions might be flawed. So when we start to think about fixing what problems we have to be able to identify what exactly is wrong. And without good data, you're not able to do that.
So those are a lot of interesting ways you look at information, data, and the way you look at just infrastructure. So what is in your history, in your past, what has made you kind of have a passion to solve this problem?
I think it's really a lifestyle for me. From when I started becoming into adulthood, I sort of saw my life as one of wanting to be a steward of the earth, wanting to make sure that whatever I did, I made things a little bit better for future generations, ensuring that the blessings that I had, my children, my grandchildren would be able to benefit from. And wastewater technology and the ability to have safe drinking water was one of the marvels of the 20th century. I mean, I think we take it for granted that you can open your sink and have good drinking water. You can flush your toilet and everything goes down. But as we're
Hmm.
starting to see, those systems are crumbling. These things that were the bedrock of Western society are slowly starting to break down. And so I think being able to ensure the sustained nature of some of the most important aspects of our cities, of our built infrastructure, is crucial for maintaining a healthy and happy society moving forward.
So that's interesting and great way of looking at things. Kudos to you. We need more guys like you out there think the same way. Obviously, it's one of those most important things out there is drinking water. Now you're in Israel, correct? You live in Israel.
I do. I live in Jerusalem.
So interesting question. At least I think desalination plants, things like that. Those things are like non. No one talks about it in the United States, but from what I understand, desalination plants and stuff is what Israel's been using for decades, potentially. Is that correct?
Yeah, I mean, Israel is on the leading edge of its water management, both on the drinking water side, but also on the wastewater side. So to
Hmm.
start, we have developed a highly efficient water reuse program. Over 80% of our wastewater here gets treated and reused for agriculture purposes. So we're
Hmm.
already lowering our demand of fresh water by using treated, but not to, non-potable drinking water, purple pipes, as you might call them in America,
Mhm.
to for for plants. They don't need chlorinated, perfectly clean drinking water to grow fruit, to grow vegetables. So that was the first thing, and we're 80%, and the next following country I think is like 60%, right? So far and
Wow.
away the leader of water reuse, and that's to lower demand, right? So already there we're using, only drinking water that needs to be drunk, and other types of water for other purposes, and then even there, thank God, Israel's countries continue to grow. We've
Hmm.
actually made peace with our neighbors by selling them water, so demand has continued to go up. So then we've started introducing and developing desalination technology. So exactly that. You pull water out of the sea, you uh, essentially pump it through really fine membranes, and then you've got drinking water.
That's That's awesome. First of all, water reuse is one of those things we've talked about for decades in the United States, but it's never happened yet. And desalination, which we could be using potentially in California, we haven't used yet. To the point where we should have had it already installed in decades, right? Of using it
Sure,
and
sure.
switching our ways of using fresh water from the Colorado River, for example. We could have started using ocean water. So, what's the problem with brine? Is the brine and desalination a big contaminant?
Yeah, I mean, brine management is certainly an issue, and this I would say I'm not necessarily speaking in my top level of expertise,
Sure.
but I don't necessarily know exactly what they do with the brine. My understanding is that you dispose it in a way that's far enough away from the coast that there's a lot of mixing going on, and that you time the disposal so that it's high tide, and there's all these different models that you do to ensure that you're not causing any damage to the local ecosystem,
Yeah.
but with the brine disposal.
That's one thing I was reviewing is the brine, and they said if they put it back in the ocean, obviously it could be a catastrophe to the ecosystems in the ocean. So I haven't
Yeah.
studied up enough on it either. Not just enough to be dangerous to talk about it, but that's about it. So I'm with you on that whole process. So uh,
Luckily there are a lot of great PhDs out there who have studied the issue and figured out the best way. And everything's a trade-off, right? Like obviously, drinking too much groundwater and salinating the aquifers is also really bad, right? So everything has its pros or cons, and finding a nice compromise so that we can live in harmony with the earth is, I guess, the ideal.
yeah, no, you're 100% on the money with that. Now you said wastewater. I don't know. Did we? Did you? I don't think you really mentioned too much about the wastewater program, but we were talking about your water reuse program and desalination. But what's so unique in Israel about wastewater?
I guess water reuse is the end of a wastewater
Okay.
system, right? So you collect wastewater and then you treat it up to a standard where, in the US, the standard would be secondary treatment and then dump it into the river.
Oh,
The
okay.
Israel will then go to a tertiary treatment and reuse it.
Got it. I
And you
thought
do,
maybe
and you
there was.
do, yeah.
I was just thinking there may be a different way you guys handle wastewater like collections as far as
Oh,
maintenance
entirely?
and
No,
operations and things like that.
Yeah, I'm not. I actually turned down a job doing wastewater treatment design for Ayyeka, so
Oh, okay.
I'm not specifically familiar, but I would assume, these standards are fairly standard. Maybe there's slight differences on how bioreactors work or sizing of clarifiers, but it's all pretty internationally standard of, how do we treat wastewater, and
Right.
frankly, they've been doing it the same way for 40, 50 years. So there is definitely a lot of area to innovate, and there is sort of innovative MBR technology coming out of Israel, and other sort of like chemical additions, innovative or nuanced ways of doing chemical treatment instead of biological treatment. There's
Right.
all as you could do. I mean, it's a whole world certainly.
Right. Where do you see the future of infrastructure as particularly wastewater and water? Where do you see the future?
I think we were speaking moments about how the U.S. is behind and the U.S. is this. These projects are expensive, right? Like to build a desalination plant is not like a drop in. But we were talking about $1 billion of years of construction and operation and training and maintenance. So I think we need to find stopgap solutions, and I think technology, you know, IoT, smart systems, right?
Yeah.
The energy sector adopted it 20 years ago, and now we're seeing tremendous gains over there. While here on the water wastewater side, we're still doing it. For the engineers out there, my Metcalf and Eddy textbook is exactly the same as it was that my senior engineer had. She had version 3, I had version 7, and almost down to the page, it was the same thing. So um,
That's fun.
bringing in 21st century technology, bringing in success stories from other industries to make our systems more smart, to make our systems, put some more silicon, put some more computer chips out there, and let the machines help us have
Why
better
do
systems.
why do you think there is a difference from maybe some things that are done in Israel as far as water and wastewater versus the United States?
Yeah, and I think demand,
Okay.
right? Like Israel is a desert. with a
Yeah.
rapidly growing population, right? It's 2023. Israel was started in 1949. We've millions of new people have all of a sudden showed up in a desert and needed to drink, and they needed to
Right.
build cities. Tel Aviv was nothing in 1920, and now it's a major international metropolis.
Yeah.
Things happened fast, and they needed to be smart, and it was a desert, and they needed to be creative. I think in America, you have excess, you have a lot. I mean, we say, oh, the Colorado River. Colorado is a big river,
Yeah.
and water has been traditionally very cheap. There's been no economic demand to innovate. There's been no environmental demand to innovate. And so the markets paused, and they continue doing it the same way they have. They have no reason, there's no reason for them to change if there's not something pushing them, right? That's just like the nature of the free market.
That's
So
interesting. Yeah,
here,
you're right.
yeah.
Yeah, no, that's a great perspective. I mean, that's the way things are run here in utilities. It's pretty traditional, right? There's no necessary need for it, except for now with all the water main breaks, we're starting to actually really look at how many
Well,
there
that's
actually
what
are.
exactly. Well,
Versus,
that's starting to see what we're happening now. The system, these systems were designed for 50, 60, 70-year lifespans, and now that's where we're at, right? It's over.
that's true.
They weren't designed to last this long, and we're still using them and running them the same way they were in the 80s and the 70s and the 60s and the 50s, and so this is now that, maybe it's not economic, but it's a logistic. You can't send people
Yeah,
after blown PRV valves all the time. You have CSO issues. You have pipes cracked and leaking water here and intaking huge storms during wet weather events. And, the demand is now finally arriving,
yeah,
and the market is shifting. And that's why, what you're doing and what we're doing is filling that need in the market of people saying, hey, I have these huge sewer mains that are leaking or taking in water. What can I
right.
do? How can I fix it? And it's too late. If this would have been 20 years ago, maybe you could have done a stopgap here or a quick fix there. But now we've got to come up with some more creative solutions
Yeah,
to fix the issue.
you're spot on there. It's we're at the end of the line for the life cycle of the pipes. Now we're trying to scramble, and no one has the data together to actually say this is where we need to prioritize our system and fix it first. I think that's one
Exactly.
of the things we lack, right? It's like out of sight, out of mind, and then all of a sudden you had the baby boomers retiring, and all that institutional knowledge went with them, and then all the asset management plans went with them. And now we are scrambling to put an asset management system in place to figure out what's going on in the water and wastewater and roads and everything, right? That goes infrastructure. How do you think? Okay, so we have basically like three types of problems. You got storm management, right? You have sanitary sewer, wastewater management. You have water, clean water, drinking water, things like that. Those three things that can be very problematic for utilities. Environmentally, looking at that, stormwater runoff, overflows from sanitary sewers, and then obviously just clean water leaks everywhere throughout the system. How does a public works director, if you were in that shoes, how would you manage that, Aryeh?
Yeah, I mean, I think everything is dependent on my values and on my needs, right? So if I'm in California and water's expensive and there's a drought, then I
Yeah,
probably am going to focus on my drinking water side, and I'm going to, try to nail down. I'm going to identify my biggest leaks, and I'm going to go after my non-revenue water. But let's say I'm in the Midwest and it rains a lot, and we've got a great water treatment system, but my pipes are a combined sewer, and we're overflowing sewage into the river, and no one can swim in the river, and we're destroying local parks because of it, right? So
right.
I would, you have to be able to identify what my issues are, and then I have some sort of matrix saying, hey, you know economic, environmental, obviously legislative, or regulatory, right? Like if the EPA's on my back telling me to fix my CSO issue, I'm not going to run a PRV monitoring campaign, right? Like, so I think regulatory is probably the first issue you got to deal with. If the government's on your back, that's the end of the line. So yeah, it depends on exactly my area or what my biggest issues, and that kind of leads us back to this data question, right? If I don't
Right.
even know what my problems are, I'm not going to like go out and replace every PRV valve, right? It's going to cost me 20 years of budget, and then, oh, by the way, no, it was actually we really should have relined our manholes, right? Like, so,
Right. Right.
you gotta make smart decisions, and everyone's on, shoe line budgets. Prices are going up, chemicals are going up, electricity's going up, everything's going up, and budgets aren't. The only expenses are. So we got to be smart, and to be smart, you have to have a full deck of hands, know what's going on.
Yeah, no, that's a great answer. It's probably the best way to look at things is depending on what environmentally is going on and the pressures behind you to make those decisions. If we had a better way of transitioning from our traditional, and you kind of know where I'm going with this, traditional ways of doing engineering, for example, the same ways we've been monitoring flow using flow meters, for example. How do you think we can look at technology and new devices as a way to start looking to get away from maybe some of these flow meters that traditionally we've been using, that now we have different types of level meters maybe that could do some different calculations for us. What's your kind of perspective on the transformation of tech and transitioning into technology, I guess, with these different types of devices that are out there?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think being able to have a versatile tool chest, I think should be a priority for utilities coming in, right? Like, we're
Yeah.
saying, I don't know what my issue is. Is it water? Is it drinking water? Is it storm water? So you're going to need to be able to ask questions, and you're going to be able to iterate. Like any good research project. I started here, and then I changed over to there, and then I changed over to here. And a lot of the technology that's out there doesn't suit that, right? Like, you have
Right.
sensor companies that are embedded, and they measure their two things, and then they've developed now telemetry on top of that, and it's either their silo or the highway.
Mm.
And that's not going to work, right? Like, if I was an
Hmm.
artist and I said, I want to start getting into art, right? I wouldn't go out and buy a $3,000 wood chisel, right? Like, I would I would buy some pens, some markers, maybe some paint, and then check it out and try a little here, try a little there, mix it up, and then from there I could say, oh, actually I have a painting problem. I should really get more deep into painting, and then develop and build my assets and buy higher quality sensors, more technology, and develop that out that way. The the market is filled with people who have been making sensors for 30 years, and they're only
Yeah.
interested in selling their sensor and their device. And they don't want you to look around. They don't want you to say, oh, well, could we also measure this? Could we also measure that? Those
Yeah.
are, scary questions for them. So thinking out of the box, thinking more versatility.
Yeah, I'm with you on that one. That's kind of the way this industry is. It's like, okay, well, everything's got to be siloed. We own this, and what's ironic in the United States is sometimes they'll hold it from the actual community that gave them the job to collect the data, which I'm so amazed by. I'm like, wait, you're gonna now force them to pay for the data after they just hired you to do a project, like for inspection or put meters in, whatever it might be. It's really interesting. Everyone's so afraid of change. It seems like sometimes that they just want to hold all their all their cards to their chest, so to speak. And I think that's a huge barrier to entry for technology companies like Ayyeka and my technology and everybody else that's trying to digitize this space. Where do you think we can improve on that?
Yeah, I mean, I think when it comes down to it, a lot of it is a personality thing, right? Civil engineers, you don't want them to be crazy, try new things, right? These people are building bridges. You don't want, like, testing new technologies, and so there's something good about them being slow to adopt in a way, because they're dealing with the most important parts, right? If you have some new guy testing some new technology and it breaks the whole wastewater treatment plant, like, a lot of people are going to be in trouble.
Right.
So there's definitely that aspect there. But I think at the end of the day, these well, my experience working with utility directors, my experience working with field crew people, is that they want to see the solution work, and they
Hmm.
want to see it to believe it. So getting pilots out there, building those relationships with the people, hearing what their pain points are. Often we come in, we're a technology company, we think we know what they need.
Right.
Listening to the client, saying, hey, what are the issues you're dealing with? How do you spend your day? Because they might not think that our solution can fix that. They may not think that the way that they think this is the way we've been doing it. This is how we fix this problem. and they don't know that there are other ways of doing about it. So, gaining their trust, hearing their issues, and then saying, hey, I've got a new way to do that. You want to try it
Right.
out for 3 months, see how it goes, and
That's,
building a relationship that way.
that's a lot of logic behind that, Aryeh. You got something, man. That's for sure.
Okay.
So uh, going into when we first started, what do you mean by that?
Sorry, I think I missed part. What do I mean by what?
Just good data and bad data. Like
Oh,
I
good
think,
data. Sure.
yeah, like you go ahead.
Yeah, I think what's like a good metaphor? So I actually recently was on an install in New York City, and it was my first time really actually installing our system. And these are not nice environments, right? These are
Right.
wastewater, and you're like underground, and there's not really good light or ventilation, and there's cars honking, and it's complicated what we're trying to do here. It's complicated trying to see what's going on in an underground system. And there's a lot of sensors on the market that claim to do what they're doing,
Right.
but some don't work, right? Or some were installed wrong, or after it was installed, it got hit by a big wave of overflow. So if you think you're looking at a level in a pipe, right? You think it's
Yeah.
3 inches, 3 inches, 3 inches, 3 inches, and then all of a sudden you realize, oh my gosh, it's been 3 inches for the past 4 days. There's no diurnal curve. There's no changes. This thing is pointing at a wall. You just operated your system incorrectly because you have bad
Yeah.
data, right? Because the sensor is
Right.
reading off, right? You got even if you have the nicest sensor in the world, it got installed wrong. The guy was in a rush. The guy was tired. Whatever it is.
Yeah.
Um, so being able to understand, is your data even accurate? That's one aspect of good data. And then the second one is, am I utilizing it correctly? Do I understand
Hmm.
what this means? Do I have actionable insights? Do I have a sense of what this means in the context of my entire collection system? In the sense of, if you see a high level, but then the whole system has a high level because some industrial plant upstream dumped a bunch of water all at once, like, okay, maybe that's not an I&I issue, right?
Right.
So needing to then see your data in context and have, some people, 40, 50 year, industry professionals, they just see the data, they know exactly what it is. But silver tsunami, right? Everyone's
Right.
retiring. All these people who know how their system works, you ask for like as-built drawings, I've been in that manhole for the past 20 years before you were born, right? Like, it's like, but now it's like a whole new era. It's funny, like slowly, I'm starting to work with utilities where it's a bunch of 30-year-olds running the scene.
Yeah.
And it's both refreshing because, yeah, they're into new ideas, but it's also like no one knows what flow monitoring is. No one even knows that you got to multiply velocity times, level to get flow, right? Like,
Right.
so being able to ease people who might not immediately know what this graph means into more like lay language, I guess.
That's a interesting perspective, and only because that's exactly how things that's how they go, right? And then the other thing for us, and I would say when we're displaying the data, typically we got to go to that engineering firm, right? We got to work with the engineering firm. They're usually the project manager, so to speak, or the city, but typically it's going to be some middle person maybe involved. So when you're presenting the data to that person, they have to understand it too. If you can't get them to understand it, now you have what could be interpreted as good data versus bad data. I think that there's two people that have to agree on it, but do we have the right QA QC to back it up, so to speak? Have you ever had any experience with that?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, I think in the most traditional world, right, like which is still 99% of our industry,
Yeah.
um, you have the consulting engineering, companies providing their services to cities, and they're doing the QA QC on data. They're doing the analysis, and then they write a report, and then they go to the utility director, and the utility director never sees raw data, never does QA QC, probably doesn't even
Hmm.
know what flow monitor was being used. He just
Right.
gets a report at the end of the day saying, you need to prioritize pipe 2, 8, and 19. And that's what you should put in your CIP next year. And here's a copy of the CIP. Just sign your name at the bottom, right? Like,
Right.
That's a lot what I was doing when I was engineering professionals, was just hand holding utility directors and providing them exactly what they needed to hear.
Right.
So I think educating the end user and providing an easy, quick way, right? That's the advantage of an engineering professional. These people are very busy. Yeah, they're having their hand held because they've got 40 projects on their plate and they don't have time
Right.
to be subject matter experts in every single aspect of their job. So they have to rely on other people. So then it's like, okay, well, how can we have technology become the subject matter expert? How can we rely on computers, machine learning, artificial intelligence to do that work for them?
Hmm.
So that it's easier and also empowers the user, empowers the end user to go into the data themselves. If it's easy, if the UI is clean, and gives them those sort of next steps in a easily packageable way.
I think that you're spot on. I think that I guess the only way I kind of look at things is objectively, right? It's like, okay, well, if we're using the same old meters and we're using the same old data to create that diurnal pattern, maybe we have to massage the data or whatever because we had gaps and things like that. Do you think that we are somewhat maybe misleading on the actual problems that are out there because sometimes we do have gaps because of older types of devices that are being used? Is there any thoughts on that?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, there's definitely always bias, right? Like
Yeah.
it's the nature of humans, right? Like if you're looking for an I&I problem, you'll probably find an I&I problem. If you're looking for, uh, you know, roots growing into the pipes, you'll probably find roots growing into the pipes.
Yeah.
And that's just the nature of when humans do things, is that they come in with tainted glasses. So I guess that's also like sort of a next level advantage of having computers do it. Obviously, there's some bias in computer programming, but at the end of the day, it's a machine and it's going to do exactly how
Yeah.
it's supposed to do, and move forward. So taking that human element out of something that a machine is perfect at, right? Like going through
Right.
large sets of data and identifying issues. They're not tired. They didn't forget to drink a cup of coffee. They're going to catch everything quickly and efficiently.
I mean, yeah, as long as the model is made correctly. That's another thing we could even talk about, right?
Sure.
Is how that data and those algorithms actually work together to create intelligence, right? So uh, that's where technology like Ayyeka seems to be unique, and let's talk about that. Is what Ayyeka's been doing in the water and wastewater space.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, I think we um, we see ourselves as hyper focused on data. So we first started with, okay, well, how is data being created from the field? How are we finding out what's going on? And that's when we first sort of saw in the industry and in the marketplace that everything was highly siloed, right? You had
Right.
your sensor manufacturers from the 70s, and then the 90s came and they developed their telemetry device, and they probably haven't really changed much from the 90s. And their telemetry device can only speak to their sensor, and if you don't want it, sorry.
Right.
And we sort of said, hey, that doesn't really make sense. That's not how other industries do it. We should have one device that can connect to all sensors,
Yeah.
one system that can bring in any type of data, can do it hyper efficiently, and put it into one place for you then to be able to do whatever you want. That's what we said. We're going to create the data, and then you could do what you want with it. That was where we first started,
Hmm.
and we did that, and we have great uptimes. I've was talking with a client once, and one of our competitors, I won't be named, had like a 70% uptime. And we're
Wow.
like, 70%? Like, do you pay them 70% of their invoice to you? Like, they get 100% of the money, but it only works 70% of the time.
Right.
So, we don't have that. Our system is much more efficient. And so that was step one. And then we said, okay, well, we got all this great data to our clients. And then we sort of had that thing, like they're like, okay, well, send it to the engineering firms. Okay, oh, well, I actually don't really know what this means. Can you interpret it for us? Right. So then that's when we became, data managers,
Yeah.
and we created, first and foremost, similar to where we started, where we said, we're going to be sensor agnostic. We said, hey, we're going to be data agnostic. You have some third-party software that you really like. Great. Take the data from our system and push it over there. You have a SCADA system that you built and spent millions of dollars on.
Yeah.
Great. We'll push it into your SCADA. We'll push it wherever you want, into your GIS, into your there. We can push it. And
Right.
then and then we became sort of that funnel, that highway of data. And we did that really well. And we're, pushing it to all sorts of different places. And then we sort of said, hey, we're creating great data. We're helping you
Hmm.
manage great data. Let's help you analyze it. And let's build out a suite of different tools to help you have actionable insights, help you do QA/QC automatically, help you create dashboards, help you see where I&I is happening. And we're slowly and surely building out different software tools for every use case. Our versatility is our Achilles heel.
Hmm.
Yes, we can attach to any sensor, but every sensor has a different use case, which needs a different tool, right?
Yeah.
We probably, if at full build out, we probably have 50 different analysis tools that we could do. And,
Yeah.
and that's a lot of software time, right? And that's a lot of lead time. So
That
we're
is.
building out. We've got one for CSO, and we've got, we're working on one now for I&I. And things, we're identifying what our biggest use cases are, identifying where the biggest pain points are on the market, and we're moving from there.
Love it. Love it. You guys are, innovating the industry to basically a one-stop solution for centralizing the data, right? For water, wastewater. Sounds like it's more wastewater and storm related technology, correct? Are you in that water space?
Yeah, we are. I think the water space has the benefit of like AMI networks set up,
Yeah.
mostly for billing meters. So that like entire um, market is saturated, and like we can't really compete on AMI. And
Got it.
frankly, AMI is a great solution there. So on the water side, we more focus on like operational effectiveness,
Yeah.
um, burst pipes and things like that. But that's not like the biggest need for water utilities, right? Like
Hmm.
most cities don't have a full built out AMI network, and those who do like are spending their whole budgets maintaining it.
Wow.
So yeah, like you do have some places that have major PRV issues or major bursting pipe issues. And then we do it. We have certainly a sizable chunk of our business is focused on that. But in terms of that like revolutionary, game-changing way your day-to-day life lives, is more on the wastewater, stormwater side.
Got it. You guys have been in the industry, I think, 5 years, 6 years, 7 years, something like that.
A little over 10 years now. Yeah.
A little over 10 years now. So, what are some of the, and we got a couple more minutes, but what are some of the struggles you've had or barrier to entry you've had so far in the market in the United States?
Yeah, I mean, B2G is slow, right? Like you set your first meeting and then you talk about it, and then like quick is like, okay, we'll get back to you in 3 months. Right? That's like moving fast for government
I was
officials,
going to say, yeah,
right?
you're doing good. 3 months.
Right. And then they get back to you and it's like, okay, we'll set up a POC next spring, like another
Exactly.
6 months. And then it has to, okay, but it obviously has to run for a whole year before we can make a decision, right? So then it runs for a whole year on your POC. Maybe you got a little bit of money out of that. Now you're already 2 years after your first meeting, and they're finally ready to put in a PO, right? Like that's slow. And
It is
and
24 months.
VCs and investors are not used to B2G, right? Like the whole, I mean, I guess now we're like a little bit crashed, but until 6 months ago, people were used to like customer acquisition, turnovers, this moving fast, right? Fail fast,
Yeah.
move, 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 move. And that's just not B2G. That's just not the industry we're in. It's not the personalities of the people. It's not how it's ever been. Frankly, that's not how it's ever going to be. And so, you
Yeah.
know,
Yeah.
holding that actually when I was in grad school, I was part of a think tank on how to, they called it the wastewater valley, or like some sort of valley of death, that like to get from functioning product to like implementation and market space is so long that you can't pay rent, like you run out of money no matter how slow
Right.
your burn is.
Right.
So dealing with that has been our
That's
biggest issue.
why most technology doesn't get into the government space. They don't want to get in that
Exactly.
government space.
Yeah,
It just
yeah.
takes forever.
Not worth it.
Hopefully, we can start changing those things and start getting more Ayyeka technology out there. I appreciate your time
Oh
with
man.
me, Aryeh. It's been awesome, great insight into Israel and the United States and the different challenges and then the solutions you're providing. And it's been awesome to talk to you. And how can
Oh, it's a
everybody get a
pleasure.
hold of you?
Yeah, I mean, you can go to ayyeka.com, AYYEKA.com. You can shoot us an email, info@ayyeka.com. And yeah, we're always excited to talk about new projects, talk about ways to collaborate, and really change the industry.
Love it, man. Appreciate it. And thank you so much for your time.
Yeah, thank you.
Hang on 1 second as this cuts off.